Okay, well, welcome to Conservation Talk, where we talk about forestry, wildlife, natural resources here in Antrim County. The podcast is presented by the Antrim Conservation District. I'm Mike Meriwether. I'm your host today. So today we're going to talk about forestry, specifically private land forestry here in the county or even in the region. Just as a recap, I guess, there's 18 million acres of privately owned land in Michigan. Within those 18 million acres are forest land, wetlands, agricultural lands, riparian areas, and a host of other ownerships. It's about 70% of the natural resources are contained on private land, so it's a big deal. Forest land represents about 50% of that, or about 9 million acres. And it's the fifth largest in the country of forest land ownerships. So it's a bit of an understatement when you say private lands are extremely significant to our natural resources, our forest industry, our wildlife industry, I guess you'd call it. So we're going to chat a little bit about that today. So I have with me Carl Eklund from Eklund Forestry. And both Carl and I have been working on private land for 30 years. Between the both of us, we probably got 60, 70 years of experience, I guess. So welcome, Carl. And I'll give you a second if you want to talk about your company a little bit and what you do and what your company does in this area.
Yeah, my company's Eklund Forestry. We are kind of a consulting company, as well as we buy and manage timberlands. I have crews that cut for me, and we manage the lands for them. I started out working at the Conservation District in Kalkaska in 1990 and spent almost a decade there and had several other jobs in between then. And the mill I worked for closed in 2010, and I started this company. It kept growing. My son works with me right now, and we do management plans, timber sales, consulting, and tree plantings occasionally. Pretty much anything to do with the forests.
Good. So you said you started your career out, I guess not your career, but you have worked for the conservation districts on private lands. So let's reminisce a little bit and go back. That was back when? Like
1990?
1990?
April 18th, 1990. I remember starting, my first day was at the seedling sale, and I was pretty green on what happens at conservation districts and everything to do with planting trees, even though I'd studied it in college. They kind of threw me to the wolves, and it was a huge learning curve.
Was that the day I slept in and supposed to pick you up?
Yes, it's true. He pulled in late, and yeah, that was good memories.
Oh, yeah. So really in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, there was a priority on providing private land assistance or private land services through the DNR and the conservation districts. At one time, there was 31 programs in the state. I think it covered the whole state. Remember that?
Yep. And they had a forest. Most of them had 2 to 3 counties. Some foresters had 3. It was a pretty big program for a while there, and hugely beneficial because there's a lot of people taking advantage of landowners, the timber management. And there's no place for people to go to really get some answers of unbiased opinions. And that was the value of the program, to be able to come in and talk to a resource person and ask questions about anything to do with natural resources, especially for us, the forestry side of things, and give them answers to help them make better informed decisions on how to manage their forest. And that's why the tax dollars used to do that, help benefit the growth of the forest, so we have more vibrant, sustainable forest stands, instead of just letting things go willy-nilly and burning blacktop, as we say.
I think, I don't know, probably was the most impactful time of forest acres receiving treatments. where we were doing a lot of tree marking, tree planting, wildlife stuff. What else did we do back then?
Stream bank restoration. We had the Bourbon River watershed and the Upper Manistee River restoration. We would float the rivers and find erosion sites. There was monies available to stabilize those. Anything to do with the natural resources, really.
Yeah, and as part of that, the state actually had a program. I call it the CFM program. It's a cooperative forest management program. So the state was involved with private land activities as well at the time, and people like Tom Stone and Steve Kalish, who recently passed away. So our condolences to his family. He was a big player in establishing some private land activities in this region. Who else was there? Byron Saylor.
Pete Davis, Bob DeVillay, they were all employed by the DNR, but they were strategically placed throughout the state to assist the conservation to private land.
Yeah, they were basically mentoring the new foresters that were coming on board. So that's kind of how, and the private lands funding has shifted back and forth and was eliminated for a while. And it came back, and it's been a little problematic. The state has difficulty funding public service foresters, or they always have had some difficulties, which is probably one reason you left, huh?
Yeah, we kind of shared some of the same funding, and there was a diminish. I think you lost your Forest Service grant, or not lost, it expired and wasn't renewed, and time to move on to greener pastures, I guess. But
Yeah.
it was a great job. It was one of my favorite jobs I ever had. I would have stayed there had there been a way to support my family, but time.
So I got a call a couple of years ago now, I guess it was, from Jerry Lambert. You know Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working with the DNR with their tree planting program. And he asked me, how in the heck did you foresters back in the 80s, 90s plant so many trees? So they were going through the number of trees that were planted. You recall the amount of trees we used to plant back?
Oh yeah, we Kalkaska alone, which is heavier to state land. I think it's 38% state land compared to Antrim County, which I don't know what state land is. We were still planting probably 250,000 trees a year at 800 trees per acre. And I know Antrim would be up in the 400,000s, as well as Osceola Lake, really high. And that's just the spring seedling sale, which is the biggest.
Yeah.
We planted a lot of acreage over the years, and it's rewarding to drive around and see all the stands. We had a grant to eliminate Scotch pine, abandoned Christmas tree plantations, and convert them over to pine and other spruce and other things. And it's rewarding to see that it's really benefited the forest industry to have that program in place. Be nice to have that kind of funding again to do tree planting. But
Yeah, I remember we picked up 600,000 trees. We had to rent a big
that rider
truck. We went for both counties. I think that was the highest year that we had, was 600,000 trees we
how many
distributed.
acres? That's
Okay, so we were talking about, so that was our biggest year that I can remember. And other counties were doing the same thing. Rick Lucas was planting a lot of trees. Rory Matson up in the UP was planting a lot of trees.
it's several square miles, 600 acres, probably a year just for our two counties, and all over the state. That's a lot of land being reforested.
Have you ever gone to a pine plantation that you planted to thin it?
Yes. Yes, I did down in Kalkaska. Chuck Fawcett, if you remember him,
Oh, yeah.
he had a bunch of land, and we thinned that about 5 years ago. It was planted in 1991. He did it himself, him and his wife, on an old slot tree planter. It didn't even furrow. It just dropped it in, but it was land that had been farmed to death, and it was bitter nightshade and lichens. So it didn't have any weed competition, and it took right off. And that's probably 35 years or 32 years of growth.
Yeah.
And it's
Amazing.
rewarding.
Yeah, it is. I think the biggest thing was there was money available for people to plant trees back then. Right now, it's pretty difficult to plant anything over 10 acres. A landowner comes in, it's pretty tough to access money now for tree planting.
Yeah, if you planted yourself, I remember because some landowners had the ambition to plant, and planting 1,000 a day is pretty tough. I've done it before, but they would plant themselves. It would really cost them nothing. I think some of the costs covered 75% of the cost of trees and the planting, so it wasn't
Yep.
cost prohibitive. It didn't cost that much out of pocket to plant the land. Oh, whew.
Yeah, and you could just go to the FSA office and say, I've got
10
Carl
acres?
here wants to plant trees, and
Sign me up.
sign one little piece of paper and you'd get the money.
Yep.
Now you got to go through quite a bit of bureaucracy, I think, just to get any dollars
Yeah.
to plant trees, which is unfortunate. But
We went and inspected to make sure that the trees were planted properly and there was a certain amount of survival before they actually got the monies, but it was a very well done program.
yeah. So I guess today, I think there's 19 foresters still working under the MDARD program, Department of Agriculture program, FAP program, I guess they call it. I'm not sure they're having the same impacts as back then because there's no
No.
cost share money. Are you dealing with those foresters on a regular basis, or?
No, most of them now have online websites and they're pretty streamlined now. They're all very similar. What they do is any landowner that comes in that wants a referral to do a timber sale or a management plan, tree plantings, they post those and send them to anybody. You get on a list, they'll send them to every forester in the state. You kind of select the counties you want to do work in, and then you contact the district forester and let them know you're interested in that sale, and then they let the landowner pick who they want depending on location or the fee they charge or whatever. And I've done a little bit of that with them, but I'm real busy just with word of mouth as it is now. So it's but that's their main goal now. I think they go out, look at a sale, and some of them do a really good job. They have down the basal area, the forest type, the acreage, everything that should potentially be done on it. So it's a really good guide, but it's basically facilitating the industry and consultants to get them access to these markets in a more
and
professional way.
They operate under the Quality Forest Program. That's how they're funded. A little bit different than general funding that used to come into the district. All right, well, we switch gears a little bit and talk about the private sector. You're part of the private sector now. Told us a little bit about your company. I talked with Randy Keene from Aruco last week or last, I don't know whether it was last week. He gave us some insight about the forest industry itself, but yours is a little bit different than his. You're producing different products. So you're primarily hardwood oriented, I guess.
Grade saw logs, and I still market all the other products as well, but I work with a sawmill, Superior Hardwoods, down in Leroy, and help supply wood to them. I supply about a third of the wood. They saw about 4.5 million feet a year, and we do about 1.5 million through the crew that harvests for me. And we market everything else off for the landowner. We sell the veneer. I have pulpwood contracts with Aruco for the hardwood pulp and pine pulp. And there's many bolt mills. We have 2 right in Antrim County, Grand Traverse Pallet, and Yoder Family Sawmill, Amish, and AJD. So we're in the best area for access to wood markets. Northeast Michigan's a little more difficult because you either have to go across the bridge with your aspen pulp to LP in Newberry, which it's closer than, it's about the same distance as Weyerhaeuser, but this area is perfectly located because of all the access to highways. You got 75, 72, 131, 31. So it's a really good area for the timber industry. Good markets. Other areas do not have opportunity.
So as far as private landowners go, what do you think is the major, what are they asking you? I guess, first of all, what are the major obstacles that private landowners are facing? How, people are having, land prices are going up. taxes are going up. So what are some of the things you see with owners that own forest land? They're trying to make management decisions.
Well, it's getting harder. The price of land has gotten so high now. When I first moved here, you could buy land for $300 an acre of productive, mature forest land, and now it's anywhere north of $3,000 an acre. Well, managing timberlands, the price of timber has not come up to match that at the same rate. Prices are still kind of the same they've always been. I mean, pulpwood and bolts are roughly the same. They have little spikes in the markets over time, but maple was worth more in 2000 than it is today. And 21, right after COVID, maple was worth the highest in history. I mean, it was worth 3 times what it was in 2000. And then it came back right back down to rock bottom. And it's a boom and bust cycle, depending on markets and the housing industry. But I see if the future I see for landowners is that timber, unless you have a really well managed stand like Riley's, where they've been managing it since the 30s, 40s. They have a very healthy, vibrant stand where they can always do a harvest every 10 years and it will cover their taxes and produce income. And I don't see a lot of landowners going to have that opportunity in the future, especially as the tax rates keep coming up on land. And that's why people are enrolling in the Quality Forest Act and the Commercial Forest Act. If it's a piece that you just want to own as a timber investment, that gives you a way to keep that in the family and leave it to your kids. But it's going to be more and more difficult, especially this area has the fragmentation of the forest is huge. I mean, I started in Kalkaska in 1990. You know, all the farms that were 160, 320 acres, they've all been fractioned off. There's not a lot of big pieces of timberland left. And because of development, everybody wants to move here. I did. I've been here 35 years. You know, I'm not blaming people, but it's having a huge impact. And so that's going to impact the ability to do timber sales efficiently. It's a lot easier to move into 80 acres and do a timber sale than it is to go on 10 acres and cut 30 trees. You know, the cost of moving equipment with diesel, cost of equipment's expensive, and you want to give good value to the landowner, but you have costs to accomplish that harvest that are exceeding a lot of times what you can pay them sometimes. And it's going to be a challenge in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of timber up here. The quality of the hardwoods is declining because a lot of stands are getting high graded, and it's not just the logger. I deal with landowners. I've got a client that I cut 3 years ago. He wanted money. He said, cut it 16 inches and up. So that's what we did. I normally don't do that, but I need the work. And last year he was going to sell the property, and we went and cut it 12 inches and up, and he's kind of hitting it, clear cutting what's left because he's moved to Arkansas. And, you know, I'm not making a value judgment on it, but it's not good because that's future for my son who's in the industry. You know, I've got another decade possibly doing this before I think of retiring, and I'm wanting to leave something for him to do. So
I don't see the generational handoffs like you talked about the Riley farm, where they have generational forest management. It's handed down through the family. What I'm seeing now is more children get the property and
liquidate the resource.
Their parents did a great job managing it, and then all of a sudden they have to make a decision, whether it's just a revenue thing, they got kids going to college or whatever, they make the decision to liquidate it.
Well, the kids aren't my clients where it happens quite often where there's 4 kids, three want to liquidate and one wants to keep it. Well, it's too expensive for the one to buy it from the relative, so they have to cut the timber and then sell the land. And part of that is the people don't have a tie to the land. You know, a generation ago, there was a lot of people that left the area, went to Detroit, worked in the, auto. A lot of those people did come back, the people 20 years older than us. Well, that next generation under us, they've traveled so much. They're doing stuff online. They're living in cities. They can work from anywhere, and they don't have a tie to the land like we do. Now, I do see some people. You can see it with the small farm movement, organic foods, people growing their own thing, people wanting to buy stuff. I think people are wanting to come back to the land more, but with the prices they are, no one's going to be able to buy a piece of forest property and manage it.
People are buying property just for recreation now, I think, not so much
Escape the cities.
out of the city. So bringing the city here.
Yeah.
So,
But maple syrup's becoming a big thing up here. And they're talking about putting in 3 more million taps in northern Michigan. The Canadians are trying to value add that. The Europeans are buying a lot of maple syrup because of organic. It's natural sweetener. And that wasn't around 30 years ago. So that's a huge, could be an impact, good or bad. I mean, you'd be able to manage your forest land, but you're not going to be managing it for
you're not going to have any quality
maple
trees.
veneer logs. Yeah. You can still saw the logs that come from tapped trees, but it does have an impact on the value. A $500 veneer log is not going to, with tap holes in it.
There's quite a bit of, I don't know if they call it agroforestry or people growing mushrooms, maple syrup, other products out of the woods. So they're the woods aren't just looked at as a commodity to a lot of people. Maybe even more now. People don't look at their woods as being a revenue builder. They're looking at more from different perspectives.
You're right. There's a lot of value added stuff. I mean, there are people come to my property and I let them pick ramps or leeks and they harvest them for themselves and they do go sell them. It's a huge thing in the South, and you have to be careful how you pick them. And then the morel mushroom industry, there's areas up here that have festivals. It's huge tourism. The mushrooms, firewood's a big thing, especially when fuel gets high, natural gas and propane. Kind of a boom and bust thing too, but it's hard to get firewood downstate. It's very expensive because there's not as many woodlots. Here, falls in your lap, so to speak. There's so much timber up here. If you need firewood, it's out there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough paying for property or justifying it sometimes, I think. Owning property, because the revenues to pay your taxes are difficult to. So you got to have other sources of income, of course. So remember Rick Moore?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to read you something Rick wrote about private lands.
All right.
All right. So Rick wrote, this is years ago. I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe he was here.
2004, he went to work
So he was
for the state
forester
of
in
Montana.
Grand Traverse.
Yep.
So he wrote this, though private landowners provide these tangible and intangible benefits to society, they are not really being compensated for them. And those benefits are all the things we just talked about. So landowners continue to incur costs such as taxes, insurance, all of which are increasing, while managing the land for products that will provide no income or periodic income at best. They also incur risk of fire, major weather events, insects and diseases, trespassing. So all of these in an instant can negate the efforts of many years of forest management. I thought that was pretty insightful.
Oh, it's very true. I mean, look at all the windstorms we've had in the last decade. We had a tremendous one in 2015 that would flatten pure forests. Ear Stocking Highway over there in the Sleeping Bear Dunes. It was old growth, mature maple forest, beautiful oak and maple cherry. And a lot of that wood got leveled. If I was a private landowner, that would be very depressing.
Well, Fremont Road down by the south end of Torch had that straight line wind that blew down thousands of acres of woods. Had salvage cutting going on for years after that.
And the beech bark disease, I've got a lot of beech and the ash. When I first started Eklund Forestry, I was mainly cutting ash logs. No one wanted them. I worked with a local sawmill up in Vanderbilt that would saw them, and we could make a little money on it, but there was a lot of ash. It was just before a lot of it died, so we were able to cut it while it was still good quality and sell some veneer out of it. But the lumber was terrible. I wished I would have built a pole barn and put 5 million feet in it, kiln dried, but
yeah, we're going to do a whole series on insects and diseases that have impacted our forests, all the way back to chestnut blight, to Dutch elm disease, to gypsy moth.
Globalization's what caused it all. I mean, a lot of those diseases came over on pallets. because they in European countries in Asia they would saw them and leave the bark attached. It's green. They don't kiln dry it and they ship it over here and bugs hopped off, happy as could be.
Yeah, it's
Fresh
definitely
feeding grounds.
beech bark disease is an issue now. So we got some future problems on the horizon. Longhorn beetle and hemlock adelgid, and we'll probably do a whole program on that. So, but all those things impact our forest for sure.
Oh.
All right. Well, Carl, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Xander, is that good? Yep. Okay. Cool. Awesome.